Okay, welcome to part 4 of my series looking at Russ Miller's Facts versus Darwin from Carl Baugh's Creation in the 21st Century. I am trying a new microphone. I think the sound quality is significantly better. I apologize for the previous 3 parts. The sound was bad. My mic is going, and I'm borrowing this one just temporarily. So, okay, I'm going to get started.
They say that the evidence of evolution is found in the fossil record, as it should be if Darwinism were true. And they say that the lobe-finned fish went extinct 300 plus million years ago and was the missing link, so to speak, between fish and amphibians.
Okay, this is a prime example of why it's a really good idea to actually understand the subject you're talking about before you go in front of millions of people or thousands of people or however many. With completely ignorant statements like Mr. Miller just made. I'd be really curious to know who exactly it was that said that lobe-finned fishes were thought to be extinct. Considering the fact that, 1837, the very first lobe-finned fish was discovered, living lobe-finned fish was discovered in 1837, 20 years before Darwin's Origin of Species, 22 years. The South American lungfish is a lobed-finned fish that was discovered. In the decade after that, several more species, African lungfishes were discovered. The Australian lungfishes were discovered. So I'm really curious as to when they thought the lobe-finned fishes were extinct. Now, lobe-finned fishes are indeed thought to be an intermediate between fish and amphibians, but nobody thought they were extinct. So that is just... And I think I know what he's trying to do here, and it will become apparent later on.
But the problem they have are many. Science knows of no way for nature to add new and beneficial genetic information to a gene pool.
That's correct.
As we've discussed previously.
You heard it here first. We know no way in which beneficial information can be added to the gene pool, with the exception of things like polyploidy, with the exception of things like gene duplication and subsequent mutation of one of the pairs. All the other things. So, in other words, we know no way that beneficial information can be added to the gene pool, except for all of those ways that we know that beneficial mutation and we have observed being added to the gene pool. One example I love to throw in the face when people make that stupid claim is hold up an ear of corn and go, what the fuck is this then? We know for a fact that corn evolved from a grass called teosinte. We know exactly the genetics behind how corn evolved. We know that it duplicated its genes, and then some of those genes changed, some of those genes stayed the same. We can trace it. Yes, it was through human maintenance, human keeping that. But the point is that it's a great model for how natural selection can add information, can keep existing information, can keep those necessary genes that a plant needs or an animal needs. However, the duplicate copy, since there's already a functioning copy, the duplicate copy is sort of free to mutate. And that can add things like turning what looks like a fairly normal grass into corn, which is completely different.
But even more important is that the lobe-finned fish was found alive 70 years ago.
Yes.
He's been found alive today in many oceans, and he doesn't walk around on the bottom of the ocean on those lobe fins. He's a very good swimmer.
The coelacanth.
The coelacanth. So why are they still teaching this in the textbooks? And if you look at the fossilized version, which is supposed to be 300 plus million years old, he looks exactly like the living coelacanth today. I thought things evolved over millions of years of time. No evolution in the fossil record.
Okay, where to begin with this? First of all, the coelacanth has not been found in many of the world's oceans. The coelacanth has been found in one of the world's oceans, the Indian Ocean. There's been one population, one species found off of Madagascar. There's been another species found off of Indonesia. That's both in the Indian Ocean. So that right there is, it's a load of crap. The other thing is that somehow finding this, this is what goes back to earlier when he was talking about how we thought the lobe-finned was extinct. The idea being that somehow we hypothesized this lobe-finned fish that then went extinct after it spawned tetrapods And then suddenly we find the coelacanth, we find this lobe-finned fish, and it invalidates all of our ideas about tetrapod evolution, and yet such a lie is still being taught. That's what he's trying to say, ignoring, of course, as I said before, that lobe fins have been known alive and well long before the coelacanth was ever found. The coelacanth is one group of lobe fins, one group, 1 out of 3. Okay, actually there's 4, but 1 out of 3 that we would call lobe-finned fishes. The 4th one would be tetrapods, that is the tetrapodomorphs, modified lobe-finned fishes that we call terrestrial vertebrates. But now this group, now the coelacanths are one form, the coelacanthomorphs. Now they are one group of these lobe fins that, with a few exceptions, have never been thought to be ancestral to the tetrapods. They've got a lot of differences in when we just knew their fossils, there were significant differences between them and what we do recognize as early tetrapods or possible ancestral lobe-finned fishes. So coelacanths have been off the line. They've never been really, well, there have been a few speculations that they were, but there's never been a majority scientific consensus or viewpoint that coelacanths had anything to do with tetrapod evolution. They do show us a lot about maybe what these early fishes may have looked like and behaviorally and stuff like that, so they can teach us things. And that actually is the case. We have found that because when they watch them swim, now that we've observed them alive, the way that they move their fins is the same pattern at which tetrapods walk. So there's a pre-adaptation to the walking motion that probably was present in the whole group. It's a little bit different than we see in the modern other lobe-finned fishes today that are alive today, but that's because they're specialized. Each of them, they've all been evolving. None of these are the ancestral species. Okay, all of these have been evolving their own pathways for hundreds of millions of years, doing their own thing. So this idea that somehow we're finding an actual ancestor living today is another one of the straw men. But the point is that it doesn't invalidate the idea. There's nothing about all it did was give us a whole lot more information. We didn't lose any information about tetrapod evolution. In this, you notice that he doesn't once mention any. There's a one on the slide, the Eustepteron, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But there's a whole bunch of Panderichthys and Tiktaalik and numbers of other of these that we have, these fishopods, where it's really, really difficult to tell the line as to whether they are tetrapods or whether they are these lobe-finned fishes. He's not mentioning those, and that's on purpose because they kind of spoil his storyline. Let's see what else here. This idea that the coelacanth that's alive today is somehow identical to the 300 million year old fossils is the biggest. It's a crock of shit. Okay, first of all, the vast majority of known coelacanth fossils are under 30 centimeters in length. Okay, we're talking about a foot long total. They were all freshwater, so they're freshwater and small, while the living coelacanth is deep water, marine, and reaches 5 feet, 4 or 5 feet long, or bigger. Okay, it's a big fish. That right there is a huge difference. The modern coelacanth, the one that's alive today, is a family that has not been ever found in the fossil record. Okay, that right there is critically important. So understand that. Although at the very least, the genus hasn't. Maybe the family has been discovered. I might be incorrect on that. But the point is that it represents a group of most of the coelacanths. They were an enormously diverse group, of which 90+% of them are extinct with this few species that we have alive today, the 2 we have alive today. So to say that they're identical is stupid. They differ in fundamental ways. Their habitat differs, their morphology differs, they superficially look alike, yes. And when you show a picture of that fossil and you show a picture of the modern coelacanth, yes, your layman not familiar with ichthyology is going to look at them and go, wow, they are the same. And they like to pretend that they're the same species, that there's absolutely no difference between them, and that this somehow invalidates evolution. And it's just simply false. And the fact is, living fossils themselves don't invalidate evolution, because nobody says things have to change. And everything is changing. But gross external morphology can remain fixed for hundreds of millions of years. We've seen it in a lot of species when there's no pressure for that morphology to change. So that doesn't mean that their biochemistry isn't changing. It doesn't mean that there's a lot of internal rearranging going on, or maybe there's none. If the environment's constant, the species or the form will remain fairly constant. That's been known for a long time. It's nothing new.
They have a philosophy to mandate rather than the factual data, and we're looking for the factual data.
They allow their religious philosophy to undermine real science.
This would seem like a good place to insert pot meet kettle. And I have to say, I honestly don't think that either of these guys would recognize a fact or scientific evidence if it bit them in the ass. They certainly aren't demonstrating it anywhere in this video.
They say this extinct land mammal led to the Ambulocetus, which they claim is the missing link between the land mammal and the whale. But actually, the only bones found of the Ambulocetus are these, about 25% of a skeleton. The dark bones are actually found in a different strata layer in a different location. They're not even from the same animal. But by coming up with 25% of the skeleton, they say that's the missing link. But he doesn't have a pelvic girdle. They don't know if he walked, ran, swam.
So I'm going to start here with a close-up of the Ambulocetus natans drawing that Russ Miller provides. Now, as you can see here in this drawing, we're missing a whole lot of that skeleton. As he points out, I don't know the actual estimate, but he said 25%. Okay, that looks about right to me. But what's more important is you see that we're missing, the entire lower spinal column, the pelvis, most of the back end of the skeleton. And in fact, what we have of the back end of the skeleton is actually from another individual from a different strata layer. This is pretty amazing that we would reconstruct a walking whale from such pathetic evidence. So, in taking a look at this, let's kind of think about what might be the case. Let's look at the actual skeleton of the very first Ambulocetus that was found. Now, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I could be wrong here. So forgive me. I'm really talking outside of my area of expertise. But it seems to me that the drawing that Miller provides, which is actually from Jonathan Sephardi, but that's okay. This is why it's a good idea maybe not to borrow from other creotortionists. Maybe look up the information yourself, because the actual skeleton looks like this, and it seems to me there's a bit more than that drawing shows, including, let's see, the fucking pelvis is there. What do you know? The pelvic girdle that we supposedly didn't have. Back legs are there. The entire spinal column is there. In other words, a whole lot more of it's present. Now look at these next to each other. Look at these together, side by side, and you can just kind of get the impression that maybe by leaving some of the skeleton out, there was an attempt here to deceive the viewer, to deceive the person looking at this evidence into thinking that maybe evolutionists, maybe the scientists studying whales were trying to be deceptive in reconstructing this animal. Also, this is kind of important to know that the skeleton, the actual skeleton, the photograph above, is the type specimen, the first one found of Ambulocetus natans. It is one of several skeletons we have now, so we have a lot more of it than even this shows. However, this was the very first excavated skeleton, the one that was described formally, that the name was given to, the taxon name Ambulocetus natans was given to this particular specimen here. So I don't know, it's kind of interesting. Who's lying? You guys decide for yourself.
And Basilosaurus is more of a reptile, and he's actually 10 times the size shown. But if they drew him to scale, he wouldn't fit the propaganda.
And unfortunately, the facts are not being given.
That's right, he said Basilosaurus was more of a reptile. Which is hilarious, considering, it's not a reptile, and it's nothing like a reptile, except for the fact that its name has saurus in the name, but that's only because when it was first discovered, the vertebrae were thought to be from a dinosaur, and it turns out they were wrong, and it turns out to be an ancient whale. It's been long known to be an ancient whale since the 19th century. That's just a load of crap. It's a perfectly good Archaeocete primitive whale.